But what we saw at that time was that the Department of Justice was reporting that 300,000 American kids were being sold for sex in America every single year, and that only 1% of them were ever being identified because of misnomers and myths and people thinking that it looked different than what it actually did. And if they didn't have a safe place to go and heal once that 1% was identified, then 80% were ending up back in traffickers' hands.
I'm just curious, Kristi, how does someone become a victim of trafficking?
The misnomers and myths tell us that it's abduction, right? That it's Liam Neeson's movie Taken, that it's somebody who's kidnapped and transported down to Mexico and being sold. But the reality is traffickers are just those who exploit vulnerabilities. And if you think about any type of vulnerability, of a food insecurity, a housing instability, a 12-year-old girl, 13-year-old girl who's just looking for love and attention and acceptance and somebody to tell her that she's beautiful.
I guess what I'm understanding is everyone should be downloading this app.
Yes.
And just have it handy. And it's as simple as you report what you observe.
Because a lot of people are hesitant, they're fearful of, okay, am I going to get in trouble? What's going to happen to me?
We are trained professionals that are able to help assess the situation, bring that information to law enforcement. What's worse than, getting it wrong is not reporting it at all when it is something.
Kristi Wells is a leader on the front lines of the fight against human trafficking. As the CEO and co-founder of Safe House Project, she saw a critical gap. Survivors were being identified, but there weren't enough safe places for them to go. So she helped build the solution. Today, Safe House Project is a national force, expanding safe housing, training communities to recognize trafficking, and advocating for survivor-centered policy change. Under Kristi's leadership, thousands of survivors have been supported through trauma-informed care, education, and long-term recovery pathways. And in this episode, Kristi shares what it really takes to turn awareness into action.
Well, Kristi, thank you for joining us.
You have such a great platform and story, so why don't we just dive right in? Tell us about Safe House Project and what problem does it solve?
Yeah, so Safe House Project is a national anti-trafficking organization serving in America that has a mission to see trafficking eradicated. And that is a big, audacious goal. But we founded it, my co-founder and I launched it in 2017. Both of us came from corporate America and really had a heart for the issue. We understood what trafficking looked like internationally. I'd seen it in Costa Rica, she'd seen it in Southeast Asia, and a friend of ours went to South Africa, saw a need to build up a safe house to protect kids at risk of trafficking. And as he did, I jumped in, having had a background in PR. He was doing a hip hop album with a bunch of Grammy artists. And so I ran the PR for the album. And we were trying to raise money for this safe house in South Africa. But people started to say, that's great. I'm so excited you're doing that for the problem over there, but what are you going to do about the problem here? And didn't have an answer, weren't really looking to have an answer, but decided to take time to become students to understand the issue and of human trafficking. What were the needs? What were the gaps? And what in the world could we do with corporate America backgrounds to make any difference? So what we saw at that time was that the Department of Justice was reporting that 300,000 American kids were being sold for sex in America every single year, and that only 1% of them were ever being identified because of misnomers and myths and people thinking that it looked different than what it actually did. And if they didn't have a safe place to go and heal once that 1% was identified, then 80% were ending up back in traffickers' hands. So Safe House Project today is a national organization that does a few things. We help train people to identify and respond to human trafficking. We have to see more of the problem. We have to see more than 1% of the trafficking victims in order to solve this issue. And so equipping communities is key. So we've trained about 500,000 people plus to date to identify human trafficking. We help victims escape their human trafficking situations. So this is not us being the heroes and kicking down doors. It's really coming alongside them when they have 10 seconds of insane courage to walk out the door into the Uber that maybe we've got for them. And we get them to safety. And then ultimately we get them to the best safe home in the US where they can heal. And healing is education and life skills training and therapy, and helping them understand that they are more than a commodity. We help fund new safe homes and certify them, and we have a national reporting mechanism that allows us to equip communities to report trafficking through an AI-powered technology, and those tips get directly handed to law enforcement. So we work across a lot of areas, but at the end of the day, the problem that we're looking to solve is human trafficking, and do it by any possible means that we can.
Obviously, what you're doing is amazing, Kristi, but I gotta ask, why are you doing this? What is the why?
So when we launched Safe House Project, I remember going kind of back into the recesses of my mind, and the first time I saw human trafficking in Costa Rica. And when I saw it, I saw children as young as 6 that were being sold into the commercial sex trade. And when we were working to build the safe home in South Africa, the kiddos that we were looking to serve were anywhere between 6 and 12 years old. And at that time, I had my co-founder and I had 5 children between the two of us under the age of 7. And we kind of we're stuck between this reality of these horrific things are happening in the world, and then seeing our kids run and play and pick flowers and, play basketball, and realize that our families are military families, and our husbands travel around the globe defending freedom. And the reality that in the land of the free and the home of the brave, there were more people enslaved a day than any other point in American history, it didn't sit well. It was something that we couldn't unsee. And we wanted to make sure that we were giving that same opportunity of freedom to other kids in the same way our kids have it.
I'm just curious, Kristi, how does someone become a victim of trafficking?
Yeah, so I think the misnomers and myths tell us that it's abduction, right? That it's Liam Neeson's movie Taken, that it's somebody who's kidnapped and transported down to Mexico and being sold. But the reality is traffickers are just those who exploit vulnerabilities. And if you think about any type of vulnerability, of a food insecurity, a housing instability, a 12-year-old girl, 13-year-old girl who's just looking for love and attention and acceptance, and somebody to tell her that she's beautiful. There are a lot of different things that can be vulnerabilities. Incarcerated parents, drug-addicted parents, early childhood sexual abuse. All of these things can be vulnerabilities. But a trafficker will come into their world. And in today's space, I was raised with the idea of stranger danger, right? Watch out for the creepy man in the white van down the street. But in today's world, kids are accessible by strangers through technology, through social media. And so a lot of these kids are, I think I was working on something yesterday, and about 55% of our child trafficking victims are being first encountered on a digital platform. And so somebody will look for somebody who's being bullied, or somebody, a young girl who's posting pictures on Instagram, very clearly trying to look like a model. And they will reach out to them and say, "You're beautiful. You should be a model. You should, are you looking for money? Are you looking for, whatever it may be." And they'll begin building that relationship with them. They'll identify what that vulnerability and what that need is. Are they looking for stability? Are they looking for a relationship? Are they looking for affirmation? Are they looking for food and, basic needs? So the trafficker will identify what that is and then provide it. Sometimes they'll groom them for 6 months, just love bombing them, giving them all the things that they need, taking care of them. And then eventually they'll flip the switch. And that person has gotten so isolated and so removed from the rest of the people in their world that when that person flips the switch, they don't know what to do. So oftentimes it'll be somebody who's posing as a boyfriend that says, "Hey, I know we've got this life that we want to build together, but in order for us to do it, I need you to do something for me. And it's just this one time, but I've got this guy that wants to have sex with you, but he's a buddy of mine. It's just going to happen this once." And she does, and he apologizes and gives her praise, and then does it again and again and again. And she's hoping so badly to get back to what those first 6 months were. that when he kind of ebbs and flows, then she believes that eventually that will come back and that this is just temporary. But oftentimes after months or years on end, there's no escape. But also in America, we see upwards of 40% of our child trafficking victims are first trafficked by a family member. And so those are the ones that go from early childhood sexual abuse by maybe an uncle, that then that uncle begins selling that girl that he's abused to his friends, and he's making a profit off of it. So it can look a lot of different ways, but at the end of the day, there's a vulnerability there. Somebody is exploiting it and then ends up converting that into a trafficking situation.
You would think trafficking is more of somebody's forcing someone to do things. And the models that you just explained on social media and a close member, it's more of a boyfriend or someone that is manipulating emotionally in a different way. What are the other models of trafficking out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are 25 different business models of trafficking. And so the ways that this can also look are massage parlors. We have a rampant problem with that in the United States, where there are massage parlors that are illicit, that are run, most of them by Chinese operators. They promise women in China freedom in the United States, that they will come here, and they're being forced into these massage parlors where they're forced to perform sexual acts. They're not allowed, their visas are taken or whatever, or if they've come into the country illegally, then they're constantly threatened with deportation, that they'll be turned over to ICE. But if they do have papers, they're taken and held. They're forced to oftentimes live in the massage parlors. They're sleeping on cots, at best sleeping on the floor, forced to engage with customers as they come in. There's that. There's labor trafficking that is different from the sex trafficking I was mentioning, but we see a lot of this in hotels or in restaurants or on farms, where people, especially the immigrant community, an undocumented immigrant community coming into the U.S., they might be in a position where they are on a farm and they are their documentation is taken away and they're threatened with deportation, and so they're working for basically little to no wage and being forced into the situations of intense labor. Again, no pay, no control over where they go, and so again, it can look a lot of different ways. There's trafficking that can be controlled by really violent gangs, by MS-13, or any of those are trafficking in San Diego, California. Vast majority of that is familial, but also gang controlled. And so you think of these gang members that the gang's their family. And so the young girls are being sold for sex. And so it can look a lot of different ways, sometimes where the victim is manipulated into it, where they almost believe that it's a choice that they're making. But in the US, you have to prove force, fraud, or coercion in order to identify somebody as a trafficking victim. And even things like drug abuse by the victim, that can be used as a method of coercion in order to keep them compliant with the trafficker's demands. And so even that can be used as a method for proving that they are a trafficking victim.
And now I'm just curious to know, as far as basically the process of support and response, I'm curious, once a victim is actually identified and they reach out to you, how do you guys respond?
That's our favorite part. So when I launched this organization with my co-founder, I had one really clear and internal boundary, and that was that we were never going to do direct care and work directly with the victims. We were just going to support those people who did it. And then the very first victim who ever reached out was deaf, had one leg, and was in a wheelchair. And she had been exploited by her mom since she was 14, and had finally made her way to freedom. And I couldn't say no. And so it took months for me to find a place for her to go because of the level of complex needs. But that opened the door to where our team is now. So because we work to train people to identify and respond to human trafficking, we get calls every day from law enforcement, from healthcare providers, from victims themselves when they're looking to escape a trafficking situation and access safe housing. And so what we do is first meet them with kindness and compassion, realizing that they are incredibly brave in those moments that they're reaching out. We work to understand, who are they? Where are they? Do they have kids with them? We oddly enough, one of the trafficking situations that we've helped people escape from is out of the polygamist communities in Utah. We had a woman who had really young children, but she had 8 children, and they were trying to marry off her youngest, that I think was 8, to an older man. And that was the thing that finally made her say, we got to go.
Was that in USA? Like, are we talking in North America here?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's illegal in the US, but it's these small communities, polygamous communities that can still exist in Utah that is an extension of the Mormon Church. And that we've definitely seen those situations where, so for us, we're working to understand what their individual needs are. And then we work to help them escape and get to freedom, but then get to healing and in a safe home that we're finally matching them to based upon their individualized needs. We have about 3,000 partners across the U.S., but we will, of those, about 300 to 400 of them are trafficking specific. But we work to get them to the best place for them to get, again, education and life skills training and therapy to really address the trauma and rebuild their life, and to realize that they are worth far more than what anybody ever paid for them, that they can have a life and a new identity. But for some of these that they've been trafficked since early childhood, they've been told that they're nothing more than a commodity. They don't have basic skills. They don't know how to boil water. They don't know how to bake an egg or cook an egg. They don't know how to do laundry. They don't know how to do things that are so easy for us to take for granted. But I remember there was one little girl that we helped escape years and years ago. And she was eating dry pancake mix. She never had a real pancake. And so we, in these safe homes, they really get to learn that they have dignity and value and worth as a human being and not as a commodity.
Mm-hmm. So, Kristi, some of these victims, they don't know they are the victim of trafficking. This is what I'm hearing. So they probably just see their life as it is and struggling. So how would someone out there can identify this and use your app, or find a reporting system, police or school, or how would someone identify that and report that, knowing that the victims probably don't even know what situations they're in?
You're absolutely right. There are often times that the victims don't know. And education and training has helped put language to the things that have happened. We've had people who, I talked to somebody the other day, she was in her 30s before she ever had words to put to what happened to her. Because sometimes even when they're young and they're being trafficked, what they know is that they're being hurt. But what they don't see is the financial component behind it. And the trade-off that the trafficker is getting. And so they don't come forward. Oftentimes they're told, if you ever come forward, nobody's going to believe you. There's no support services for you. Once they oftentimes get into their late teens, then they often, if they're in that kind of boyfriending situation, then they'll say, I'm in the life. They perceive themselves to be a prostitute, not because that's what the traffickers will convince them that they are. And they don't ask for help because in the times that maybe they do reach out for it, they've been failed because we've had broken systems for so long. But when somebody is suspecting that there is somebody who might be trafficked. Our app, Simply Report, is the best tool for really helping to sniff that out. And so what it is, it's an AI-powered tool that is built on a behavioral matrix that has over 700 different behavioral indicators of trafficking. They are ranked, they are classified, and so we had laid AI on top of it that allowed it to be a chatbot. So people can share their suspicions about what they're seeing. They can go to simplyreport.com, click chat now. They can do it anonymously if they want. And they can say, I'll tell you a situation I had. I was in Chicago and saw, we'd been up and down Michigan Avenue all day, going to shops, going down to the river, going to an air show. And this whole time we had passed these 3 kids that were on the street in front of a beautiful hotel that had been selling candy bars. And they'd say, do you want to buy a candy bar? We're doing this for our sports team. But they'd been out there for about 12 hours in the heat. And by the end of the day, we passed them on our way to dinner. And one of it was my co-founder's husband said, those kids have been out here all day long. And so we said, okay, let's go see what's going on. So we went up to them. They couldn't tell us the name of their sports team. They couldn't tell us the what position they played. There was one said they played basketball, the other one said baseball, the other one I think said football. Not a consistent story. The candy bars they were selling for about $20. The QR code was going to somebody that didn't appear to be related to the team. And the longer we talked to them, the gentleman came kind of out of the shadows and put their hands on the back of these kids' necks. They were about 12 years old, did not like that we were talking to them. And when we asked them any question, they quickly guided the children away from us. And so if you were to use this app and say, I'm on Michigan Avenue, I see these kids, there's something that's going on, it would say, okay, where are you on Michigan Avenue? What are you seeing? Is there somebody that's there that's controlling them? Is there a vehicle nearby? What is the license plate of that vehicle? And it will ask additional questions. And if I said, I really want to understand if this is human trafficking, then it will engage with me in that conversation to rank the likelihood of this being a trafficking situation. And once that's complete, then the tip can go to law enforcement. But if somebody's just looking to understand what they're seeing, if they see a kid at their school that just something seems off, then they can share what they're seeing, and the chatbot will kind of help provide education and additional questions or additional things for them to look for. And so it's a really powerful tool to help community members understand what they're looking at.
Okay. And if I'm not mistaken, name is Simple.
Yeah, simplyreport.com.
I guess what I'm understanding is everyone should be downloading this app.
Yes.
And just have it handy. And it's as simple as you report what you observe. And then this is connected to, obviously, your team, and as well as, I guess, the local police officers and
it's connected to law enforcement agencies across the U.S. So once that chat is concluded, it does go to dashboards where law enforcement's able to see properly aggregated, vetted, ranked, and routed tips. So it actually shows up with the full transcript of the conversation. It ranks it on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most likely that it's a trafficking situation. It only shows the tips to law enforcement within their area of responsibility as a law enforcement agent. And it allows us to really have great visibility into what's happening across the U.S. and across the state.
What I'm curious to know, Kristi, is that has there been any complications when someone is brave enough to actually report that they are being a victim, or someone get involved and report seeing or observing someone being victimized? Has there been any complication? Because a lot of people are hesitant, they're fearful of, okay, am I going to get in trouble? What's going to happen to me? Is there any support along the way to make sure that they're fully supported after that reporting process?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So the short answer is no, we have not had complications. We always tell people they don't have to be confident that it's a trafficking situation. They just have to be concerned, because there are times that we've had people that are very confident that it's trafficking and it's not. Or they've just been unsure. They have a grandchild that's in another state and something just feels off with mom's new boyfriend, and they can share it. And that one wasn't a trafficking case, but it was a child abuse case. And so we are trained professionals that are able to help assess the situation, bring that information to law enforcement. And law enforcement's never going to prosecute somebody who isn't a trafficker, but they will look into things further. And we never want to have something that we believe is off that we don't report, because what's worse than getting it wrong is not reporting it at all when it is something. But for victims who are looking to find freedom, if they engage on the app, then they're actually directed to call a member of our team, because we don't believe that any part of that should go through that AI process. We really want to personally handhold them and walk them through those situations when they are brave enough to look for help.
How would someone prevent from their kids being trafficked, or someone they know? What are the preventions?
I think prevention is education. I think that it's the conversations that we have with them. It's teaching our kids online safety. It's teaching them anatomically correct names for body parts, and what safe and unsafe touching is, what healthy and unhealthy relationships look like. Because if we don't tell them what the bad news can be, then when it comes to them disguised and looking lovely like Prince Charming, then they'll miss it. But if they understand what is a healthy relationship, what is manipulation, what is coercion, what is love bombing, all of those different things, then they can start to see for themselves a bit better and be more proactive and more protective. My children, poor things, I have scarred them from a young age. They knew what sex trafficking was before they ever knew what sex was. But we have a lot of conversations in our house about, hey, if you can't talk to anybody that you don't know on any of the gaming that they do. We don't allow any social media for any of our kids. My daughter was complaining the other day that she wanted to change her friends' names in her phone to silly little nicknames, and she couldn't even do that because I have it locked down that she can't add new contacts into her phone without me seeing it, because I don't want people having access to my kids. We always say, it's great to connect kids to us, but what we're also doing is opening up the window for the rest of the world to connect to them unless we put those parameters in place. So healthy conversation, education, start young, start age appropriate, but definitely equipping them with information about what the world is like is definitely key.
This is amazing. I'm actually very impressed with what you guys are doing and the impact you guys are having to the society. And I understand that you guys are a nonprofit organization. I'm just wondering if someone wants to actually support, how they can actually reach out and provide donations or any support that can be a positive participation towards this positive initiative.
Well, we're grateful for that. We run a very lean operation where it is more than 87% of every dollar that comes in goes towards doing the work. And that's important to us. None of us are in this for a paycheck, but we are in this to change the world. And so if somebody wants to donate, they can do that at safehouseproject.org. You'll see that donate button right at the top and can do it that way. Or if it's larger donations and they don't want to get hit with credit card fees, then they can reach out to info@safehouseproject.org and we'll help get that processed.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kristi. Appreciate it. We have probably 100 more questions, but we can't really ask you all of them at once here. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time.